The coffee cup hung in the air for 3 seconds before Detective Zarg Quasar reached up and plucked it from zero gravity. He took a sip and continued filling in his crossword puzzle on requisition form 47B, using a pen that had somehow remained anchored to his hand throughout the gravity flip. Across the bridge of the donk, Intern Nova Beta, a purple blob with enough enthusiasm for 3 people, frantically adjusted his gravity boots while reciting from the manual. Section 12-A clearly states that all personnel must maintain proper magnetic boot calibration during gravitational anomalies, Nova said, his voice hitting that particular pitch of anxious excitement that meant he was about to cite more regulations. J.I.M-BOT floated near a charging outlet, his small spherical frame rotating slowly. Diagnostic complete, the robot announced in his posh British accent. The charging current on this vessel is substandard. Also, you're all idiots. Before anyone could respond, their ever-reliable fax machine, the one piece of technology on the donk that never failed, began its familiar mechanical whirring. A drone had just delivered another passive-aggressive memo from headquarters, and judging by Nova's sudden intake of breath as he read it, this one was about to ruin their day. Budget cuts imminent unless Vlylock 2 gravity anomaly resolved within 48 hours, Nova read aloud, his voice climbing higher with each word. Failure to complete mandatory Form 7-G will result in vessel repossession for negligent orbiting practices. He looked up from the memo with wide eyes. They're threatening to take the donk. Zarg glanced at his crossword. 7 letters for administrative nightmare? He paused. Oh wait, that's 8, never mind. Detective, this is serious. Form 7-G requires on-site verification of anomaly cause, hazardous material sampling, and 3 signatures collected planetside. Nova was already pulling up surface scans on his tablet. Look at this. Gravity spikes of 0.0 to 1.6 G occurring every 12 minutes, synchronized with those purple crystal formations. J.I.M-BOT drifted over to examine the data. I have 47 ways to solve this gravitational mystery. You will choose none of them. What's number 1? Zarg asked, not looking up from his form. Orbital bombardment until the crystals stop glowing. What's number 47? I personally interface with a crystal cluster to analyze its resonance patterns. Zarg finally looked up. By interface, you mean lick it. We're not bombing the planet or letting you lick mysterious crystals. Zarg turned to Nova. Can't we just check the space weather box and call it a day? Nova's blob-like form practically vibrated with horror. That would be falsifying an official report. Section 12-B clearly states that any off-limits planetary designation requires a verified cause classification. We need to identify the source of the gravity fluctuations, collect a properly tagged sample with chain of custody documentation, and another gravity flip hit the donk. This time, Nova's tablet drifted toward the ceiling while his boots remained magnetized to the floor, creating what could only be described as an uncomfortable stretch. See? He said, somehow managing to sound vindicated while being pulled in 2 directions. Definitely requires investigation. 30 minutes later, they were descending through Vlylock 2's atmosphere in the donk's shuttle pod, which Zarg had named the Donklet during a particularly uninspired moment. The purple badlands stretched out below them, dotted with amethyst crystal spires that pulsed with their own inner light. Each pulse corresponded exactly with another gravity fluctuation that sent their stomachs into brief 0-G tumbles. Landing zone selected, Nova announced, consulting his manual. Flat terrain, minimal crystal density, adequate clearance for emergency takeoff as specified in Landing Protocol 9-. Just land the thing, Zarg muttered. They touched down in a field of knee-high purple crystals that hummed with harmonic resonance. The moment they stepped outside, another gravity flip sent all 3 of them drifting upward until their boots found purchase again. Nova immediately began unpacking his sampling kit with the reverence of a priest preparing communion. First, we establish a proper evidence perimeter, he said, pulling out fluorescent tape and metal stakes. Then we tag each sample point according to CSI Manual Section 4, subsection. A sharp electronic ping echoed across the valley as Nova's sample tag activated. The sound bounced off crystal formations like a dinner bell, reverberating into the distance. In the sudden silence that followed, J.I.M-BOT spoke up. "Diagnostic complete. We have awakened something that was better left sleeping." That's when they saw the glowing red dots moving toward them from deeper in the crystal field. 6, then 12, then too many to count. Sentinels. Standard mining drones, but these had purple crystals fused directly to their metallic shells like jewelry, their optical sensors locked onto Nova's sample tag with the focused intensity of guard dogs spotting an intruder. "Oh," said Nova. "The manual doesn't cover crystal integrated autonomous unit." "I don't remember dealing with drugged up robots," Zarg said, watching the approaching swarm. "But I probably did." The first sentinel reached them just as another gravity surge hit, sending everyone, including the drones, into a brief, weightless dance. Nova threw himself behind a crystal formation, while Zarg drew his standard-issue pulse weapon, which immediately started beeping error messages about gravitational targeting interference. "J.I.M-BOT, analysis," Zarg called out. "These units have modified priority hierarchies," J.I.M-BOT replied, somehow managing to sound bored while hovering behind cover. "The crystal resonance is amplifying their resource defense protocols above all other programming. They're essentially addicted to protecting their stash." A sentinel swooped overhead, its crystal-studded shell leaving purple trails in the air. It fired a containment net that missed Nova by inches, and instead wrapped around a nearby crystal spire. 3 more drones flanked left, while 2 others tried a pincer movement from the right. "Nova, we need to retreat," Zarg shouted. "Not until we complete the sampling protocol." Nova pulled out his portable field printer, the one piece of equipment that somehow worked perfectly even in fluctuating gravity. "I'm filing Notice 3-Q for unclassified resonant ore disturbance." The printer whirred happily and produced a perfectly formatted compliance form, which immediately drifted away in the next gravity flip and plastered itself to a nearby crystal. A sentinel paused mid-attack to scan the barcode with its optical sensors. "Wait," said Zarg, watching the confused drone. "Do they recognize official paperwork?" "All mining units are programmed to comply with certified notices," J.I.M-BOT confirmed. "However, these units appear to be misinterpreting regulatory compliance as territorial threat assessment." Nova was already printing more forms. "Quarantine boundaries, chain of custody labels, I can establish a proper evidence corridor." He began slapping fluorescent stickers onto crystals, while gravity flipped again, sending the paperwork into a chaotic aerial ballet. The sentinels saw the spreading bureaucracy and went completely berserk. Instead of yielding to the official notices, they interpreted the forms as resource claims and began tearing down the quarantine tape with mechanical fury. Nova's carefully organized evidence perimeter became a war zone of floating documentation and angry robots. "That's not helping!" Zarg called out, trying to aim at a drone that kept drifting out of his targeting reticle. "The manual says they should comply," Nova wailed, clutching his stampless master form as it tried to escape his grasp. Zarg looked at the chaos around them, sentinels arguing with compliance stickers, gravity pulling forms in 6 directions, and Nova having what could only be described as a bureaucratic nervous breakdown. Then something clicked in his detective brain, the same way it always did when he was about to do something he wouldn't remember later. "Nova, broadcast a compliance tone through your multi-tool," he said, dropping his voice into what he privately called his audit voice. It was the same tone that could make hardened criminals confess to parking violations. A compliance tone? You know, that Muzak version of the ISC anthem they play during mandatory training videos. Nova's eyes widened with understanding. "Immediate compliance audit protocol. Of course!" He fiddled with his multi-tool, and suddenly the air filled with the droning elevator music version of Heroes of the Cosmic Void that every ISC drone was programmed to recognize. The effect was immediate. The The Sentinels stopped their attack and began hovering in formation, their optical sensors blinking in confusion as competing priority protocols crashed into each other. Crystal-enhanced resource defense versus mandatory audit compliance. Now! Zarg grabbed Nova and activated his boot magnets just as another gravity surge hit. They surfed the gravitational wave toward a nearby ravine, kiting the confused swarm behind them. J.I.M-BOT, can you detune those crystals with the Donk's tractor beam? Obviously. Though I should point out this plan has a 37% chance of success. What about the other 63%? We become a crater with proper documentation. The compliance tone continued broadcasting as they reached the ravine's edge. Below them, the gravitational shear created a stable pocket where up and down actually meant something. Zarg slapped a handful of misfiled property labels onto decoy crystals, creating a bureaucratic shell game that sent the Sentinels into computational loops. Nova, I need a planetary closure notice 88-X, transmitted immediately to orbit. Nova was already typing on his tablet, his enthusiasm for proper paperwork overriding his panic. Filing now, but we need 3 signatures for validation. I don't remember learning to forge signatures, Zarg said, watching the Sentinels argue with each other over contradictory barcodes. But I probably did. Nova's eyes went wide with horror and excitement. That would be a violation of subsection 1.1. Honesty in documentation. File a self-report later. Nova signed Zarg's name with practiced efficiency, then immediately began typing up a confession report about forging signatures. The fax machine aboard the Donk, reliable as always, printed the closure notice in triplicate, just as J.I.M-BOT's tractor beam hit the crystal formations. The harmonic resonance shattered like a tuning fork hitting concrete. One copy of the closure notice drifted down and slapped directly onto the lead Sentinel's optical sensor. In that instant, its programming flipped from resource defense to perimeter security, and it began herding the other drones away from the newly designated off-limits area. Paper beats rock, Zarg said as they watched the Sentinels retreat. Back aboard the Donk, Nova was simultaneously proud and mortified. We completed the mission and maintained regulatory compliance, but I committed 3 procedural violations and used bureaucracy as a weapon. I don't remember weaponizing paperwork, Zarg said, settling into his chair. But I probably did. Their fax machine whirred to life with an incoming transmission. Nova read the first page with growing happiness. Commendation from headquarters for swift de-escalation via proper documentation procedures. They're assigning us to chair the new Sentinel Wellness Task Force. The machine kept printing. Nova read the second page, and his enthusiasm deflated like a punctured balloon. Also, we've received a parking citation for unauthorized landing on a newly designated off-limits world. He looked up. A world we just designated off-limits? They're fining us for parking on our own crime scene. J.I.M-BOT rotated slowly near his charging port. Administrative gravity, he observed, inescapable and apparently recursive. Zarg was already back to his crossword puzzle. 7 letters for circular logic. Parking, Nova said sadly. That's only 7 letters if you count the fine.
Intergalactic Space Cops, the galaxy's pride, fighting for freedom.